So good morning, friends, and good morning, guests who are new friends, those of you in person and on Zoom. Thank you for joining in our yearly Blessing of the Animals service. And this year's service is entitled, as I shared earlier, Sacred Paws, Sacred Lives, a Blessing for All Beings. And though our pets are not physically with us in our space today, we've invited them to join us with the photos that are on the altar or in our hearts, that whether our pets are home or whether they're in our memories, we invite you to bring them with you into our service. These companions are not just pets. Whether they have paws, feathers, fins, or scales, the animals in our lives bless us every day with their presence. They are both our family and our teachers, and in many ways guides to a deeper sense of compassion and connection. As we reflect together today, we honor not just our pets, but we'll honor all creatures, great and small. Our lives are interwoven with theirs in ways that we often don't see, but we certainly feel. They remind us of the beauty of companionship and the power of unconditional love and the sacredness of all of life. And if we take the time to look into their eyes, we see the reflection of ourselves and that longing for that unconditional connection. In this service, we will explore the spiritual connections between humans and animals, and we're going to look at ancient teachings and spiritual intentions from many traditions. And each of them find sacred and honor the bond we share with the other living beings on this planet. Join with me now as we explore these together. So we're going to start with Buddhism. A profound and essential teaching in the Buddhist tradition is the concept of interdependence. It teaches us that all beings and all the elements of nature are connected, and that the survival, well-being, and existence of one is directly dependent on the others. This extends to the relationships between human and animals. In the Jakarta Tales, you might have heard of this gathering of stories. It's an anthology of stories of the Buddha's past lives. And in these stories, the Buddha appears in the form of different animals in his incarnation, teaching us stories about compassion, wisdom, gratitude, and the bond between all of us. In Buddhism, it's our responsibility to think and act ethically. This is illustrated in the beloved, or one of their most famous sutras. It's called the Metta Sutra, and it's also known as the Metta Prayer. And for those of you who attend our Tuesday meditations or any of the meditations I lead, you'll hear we always close with the Metta Prayer. And for those of you who don't know it, I'm going to recite it for you now. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings awaken to the light of their true nature, and may all beings be free. Buddhist ethics encourage us to practice mindfulness in our actions and how they impact the world around us, whether it's humans, animals, or the environment. And many of the Buddhist leaders, the monks that really inspire service in the Buddhist world, they make it their life's work to support the wellness of humanity. And in doing so, they also support the ecosystems that we live in. A great example is Bhakti Bodhi, I think his name is. I've met him and done some walks with his organization, and he's the founder of a group called Buddhist Global Relief. If any of you have ever heard of them, they do a great work, and they provide food and relief and poverty alleviation in the US and in the developing world. And they do this by creating impactful and sustainable solutions for people to grow food, acquire food, and sustain themselves. These systems provide impact on not just the people, but on the animals and the ecosystems and the environment that they're a part of. Buddhist teachings encourage us to be mindful in our actions and how they impact animals, because they understand that we live in a world of mutual dependency. All life has intrinsic value, irrespective to how they might be of value to us. Another being's value is not about us, it's about them. But sometimes humans only care or can be mindful of the ones that impact them more personally. This ties into spiritual ecology, where animals and nature are seen as the interconnected parts of the whole. All are worthy of respect. Let's move on to Christianity. In Christianity, there's a call to honor and have compassion for all beings. And many of you heard or are familiar with the scripture from Matthew. It was used in the debate last week. Of the least of these, how we care for the least amongst us is what matters the most. And this does not just apply to humans, it applies to animals. And the reason we're celebrating this blessing of the animals today is that just this past Friday was the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, who is the patron saint of animals and of ecology. I don't know if you all knew about that. St. Francis was the embodiment of selfless desire, of a selfless desire for peace and of service for others. Aside from embracing and tending to the wounds of lepers, which people would stay at least a mile away from, he would embrace them and touch them and clean their wounds and help them in ways that no one would do. But he also was told, the stories of St. Francis shares how he preached to birds and how he tamed wolves. He lived in harmony with all creation, and he referred to the animals and to nature, or whether it's the sun or the moon, as his brothers and sisters. He saw the divine in every creature. Let's move on to Hinduism now. In Hinduism, the sanctity of animals is a core part of their religious practice and mythology. In the essential teachings of Hinduism, cows are revered as the mother, symbolizing nonviolence, generosity, and nourishment. And as in all religions, people all have their own ways of practicing it, but I'm talking core Hinduism. Elephants are associated with Lord Ganesh. Most of you are familiar of the elephant god. And he's the remover of obstacles and the symbol of wisdom. Our Reverend Pippa just recently shared a fabulous service, I think 2 weeks ago, on Ganesh, and we're talking about and we're working on having a congregational field trip to the Ganesh Temple in Queens sometime next month, if possible, and if of interest. One of the famous animal deities is also Hanuman. Hanuman is the monkey, and it's a monkey god, and he is known to serve Krishna and his devoted servant. And there's also Nandi, who's a sacred bull of Shiva, and she invites the followers on a spiritual connection to the divine and themselves. In the Hindu principle of ahimsa, or an act of nonviolence, this all pertains to protection and care of others. Animals are seen as beings of their own spiritual significance. The Bhagavad Gita emphasizes the equality of all beings, and that the humble sage sees with equal vision a cow, an elephant, a dog, or the person that might eat him, any of them. In their festivals, they pay tribute to serpents and cows and animals of all kind, but it's really all about seeing the divine in humans and in animals as well. In Judaism, it's written in the Torah that God realized that man had the propensity to eat meat, and in doing so, he set specific commandments about drinking the blood of an animal or treating them without kindness or without respect for their life. In the best or pure highest form of keeping kosher, there is an ideal that the animal would be treated humanely during its lifetime. And there is a movement now with that's a kosher movement. It's called Megan Siddiq, and it's a standard that's certifying kosher food to maintain and honor the practices of compassion and humane treatment in how it is handled.
I'd like to go.
So we've explored Buddhism, Christianity, and Hinduism and Judaism. Now, what about Unitarian Universalism? As Unitarian Universalists, we have a commitment. Oh, please. Thank you for having us, Joe, coming with us at the time. And you too, my dear. You're welcome. So as Unitarian Universalists, we have a commitment to the inherent dignity of every being and worth of every being. And this extends beyond human life to include the non-human world. I'm just going to take 1 second while we have a little movement in the room. Thank you. UU principles encourage us to respect the interconnected web of all existence. This is an ethical framework, and it recognizes the value of each life, aside from how it's of value to us, as I mentioned before in Hinduism. Services like this one, along with the Blessing of Animals gathering, which we'll have this afternoon at our devoted and generous host Arlene Scala's home, we affirm our responsibility to advocate and safeguard for not just our own pets, but for all non-human creatures on this extraordinary planet. As I mentioned earlier, our seventh principle speaks directly to us in the respect for the interdependent web of all existence, which we are a part of. This ethical stance aligns us with the environment, with animals, and with concerns of all that regard to them. And it invites us to be conscious with how we treat all animals, whether it's through addressing issues like factory farming, wildlife conservation, or just advocating for the strays in the streets. So what can we do? What can we do to align ourselves with this principle? The respect for the interdependent web of all existence, which we are a part of. Well, of course, we could donate. We're great donators, Unitarian Universalists. There's a plethora of organizations out there that impact great change in advocating for wildlife, animal shelters, and a more sustainable environment. We could consider cruelty-free products in making our purchases, whether it's cleaning products or cosmetics, ones that don't test on animals. There's many out there. With a little research, we could pick out the ones that are a little more humane or completely adhere to humane standards. We could consider mindful animal consumption. If we eat animal products, to consider buying it from small farms, if we can, to try to buy grass-fed, cage-free, or free-range options. Or we could explore those kosher farms that adhere to these new standards of humane treatment of animals. Another thing we could do, just for the environment, we could consider cutting back on our red meat. It could also help our trips to our cardiologist. But if you well, first of all, beef is responsible for about half of the food system's greenhouse gas emissions in the world. Red beef, red meat alone. And it's from, well, I don't want to go into all the things that cause it, but if you don't eat red meat for one day, that day your carbon footprint is cut in half. No meat one day. At least for that day. But it's something to keep in mind. So as we move towards the end of this talk, I want to thank you for taking this exploration with me. This wasn't one of the more emotional or spiritual. I think it was a little more informative, but it also supports whatever your spiritual tradition, whether whether you're atheist, agnostic, whether you follow any traditional spiritual religious traditions. There's a calling everywhere for us to live our lives with some mindfulness or more mindfulness where we can. So today, in closing, I'd like us to just take into mind and heart how animals are not just our pets, but our companions on this earth. They are also spiritual beings whose essence is just as sacred as ours. As we reflect on this sacred relationship with animals, may we be reminded of the lessons they teach us in love, interconnected, and just being. And may we return that blessing through acts of kindness, compassion, and a deep commitment to their well-being, honoring the divine spirit within all of them. May it be so. If you like this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you.